Hello, my name is Armand Shiftray. I would like to thank you all for attending my event that took place on May 7th, 2021. I created this event because I wanted to provide people with the same platform that I was provided to speak about an innocent of discrimination in which I faced in middle school. I also wanted to thank the 11 panelists who were willing to share their stories. I would first like to introduce our keynote speaker of last Friday's event, Dr. Anthony Lee. Dr. Anthony Lee is a resident of Manhattan Beach and raised his 3 children here, all of whom went to Maricosta High School. He has a PhD in history, specifically African and African American studies from UCLA. He is also a retired lecturer at UCLA and West Los Angeles College, and he is an author and editor of several books of African American studies, and he is also an editor of an academic series on religion. On top of this, he is a poet and translator and published 5 books of collected poems. And on top of all of this, and most importantly, he's a recent member of the Bruce's Beaches Task Force. Thank you.
Manhattan Beach schools, and my sons went to Maricosta High School. So I was the Black father. Their mother is Iranian, actually, but that didn't save them from the experiences of racism which they had to go through. And actually, my sons have told me that they will never forgive me for bringing them up in Manhattan Beach because of the experiences that they of racism, that is, that they had to go through. But I can only tell you about the past. You know, my sons are now all grown up. They have families of their own. They have children of their own. So these experiences are 20 years ago. We hope that things have gotten better since then. But I can't tell you anything about that. The only way to find out what is going on right now in Maricosta is to ask the Maricosta students about it, and we'll hear from them soon. And particularly, we need to ask the Black students about their experiences because usually they are not spoken about. As a matter of fact, my own sons never told me about these experiences until much later, I mean, years later, where I began, and I still don't know the whole story, I'm sure, but I began to find out what was going on behind the scenes. But I can tell you just a couple of little experiences, little anecdotes, which I finally squeezed out of them. And one is about my younger son, who was a basketball player. He was captain of his basketball team. He was very athletic, very active. And he had a lot of friends that he would chum around with and play basketball with, especially in the evenings. And he was always out of the house in the evenings and usually with his basketball buddies. And then all of a sudden, one day, he stopped going out. I mean, he just stayed home every evening. I was quite alarmed, actually, because I wondered what on earth is happening. And I asked him, well, why aren't you going out with your friends and so on? But he wouldn't tell me. He just made some excuse. And then years later, I'm talking 10 years later now, he told me that one night he was out with his friends. They were playing basketball. It was time to go home. They would give each other rides back to their homes. And he overheard accidentally one of his friends saying to the others, okay, so who's going to take the nigger home? And he was quite shocked. And he confronted them with it, all of them actually. And they just repeated it and started taunting him with the N-word. And that was it. I mean, he never spoke to them again. And after that, at school, he was rather isolated. He continued to play basketball and just ignore all this, but he really didn't have friends to hang out with. Anyway, that was one experience I discovered later. The other one was from my older son, who also went to Miracosta. And he, this one I found out at the time, well, not everything, but he came home one afternoon after having been beat up at school, well, on the way home from school, by some kids he said were skinheads. And I was horrified, I mean, totally shocked. And I insisted on calling the police, even though he didn't want me to. And they said, well, you know, come down and make a statement at the station and so on. But my son wasn't willing to do that. He didn't want to call any more attention to himself than he already had. And he just wouldn't cooperate. And so that just passed. Then I found out many years later that what he had done was he had got in contact with a Black gang in Compton or Carson or somewhere. I still don't know the full story, but he had gotten in touch with this gang and he had had them come to Miracosta and make a big show about picking him up. You know, kind of hang outside and then see him and pick him up and put him in the car and drive him away. And that did work, actually. After that, he wasn't bothered, at least physically, anymore at the school. And he felt a little safer. But of course, this gang now expected to be paid for their services, and he had to pay them. I still don't know how much, but he didn't have much money, so he was paying them somehow. And these were experiences that were going on behind the scenes. And I'm the father, I didn't even know about it. I could see at times they were anxious and unhappy or isolated and so on, but they weren't talking to me about these things. So I don't know what's going on today, and I hope things have gotten better, but I can't rely on silence to give me that information, because of course, if you're in high school, well, who wants to stand out as someone who's getting other people in trouble? That's just not acceptable. And so we won't hear about this unless we ask the students for these experiences. Now that's pretty much, I'm not in touch with anybody at Miracosta right now. That's pretty much all I can tell you about the history of this kind of stuff that goes on. But it's not altogether academic, you know. This, it has very lasting consequences, and it's very deeply emotional, actually, even for me, and these aren't my experiences. And so I want to close with this poem that I wrote some time ago about this kind of thing, about Manhattan Beach and, you know, racist experiences and so on. And this poem I'll end with, it's called By the Numbers, is the name of it. And I wrote it after I saw 3 poems written by Giovanni Singleton, who's an important African-American poet. And she had been challenged at some point that African Americans had never made any literary contribution to American letters, to American literature. And so she was quite upset by this and went into the Library of Congress and collected all of the call numbers that she could find by African American authors going back to colonial times. And her poems consisted, they were very interesting actually, they consisted only of these call numbers, no words. And for one poem, she had put some of the call numbers in the form of a cross, and that was the poem. That was just the other poem. She had put call numbers in the shape of a flag, and that was her poem. The third poem was just a blank sheet of paper, and that was supposed to represent the books that she couldn't find or never made it into the Library of Congress. So in order for you to understand this poem, you have to know that's what I was looking at. So my eyesight is very poor, and I hope I can read this poem without stumbling over it, but let me try. Okay, by the numbers. When I saw the 3 poems made only of call numbers, I knew what they meant with that cross. I understood the flag. I could read the blank page that mourned the books that don't have numbers, that aren't even lost in the Library of Congress, pushed off the margins into, it's not a black thing, it is memory and loss. It is loss of memory. It is memory of loss. It is blankness. That peculiar whiteness of being Black without a name. When the skinheads jumped my son as he walked home from school, they didn't mean him any harm. They had never heard his name. They didn't even see him. He could have been anybody Black. When the cops stopped my son around the corner from our house, they made him get out of the car, sit on the ground with his hands behind his head. And 18 years of love and shielding couldn't protect him from that blankness, that odd invisibility as they checked the license numbers, the plate numbers, the registration numbers, the warrant and their numbers before they let him go. I could make a cross of those numbers to mark the spot. I could make a flag of those numbers to wave above the spot just around the corner from my house, on the street, just off the thoroughfare, between Jack in the Box and the KFC, next to a Black phone pole, under the high wires, when all at about 1 o'clock in the morning, when all my years of caring counted for nothing at all, and my son had no name. There is nothing at that place now, no memorial to where he discovered that he was not a child and I was not his father. Both of us pushed into that queer emptiness filled with numbers. Nothing. I would rather even a blank page over that. Actually, I'm glad I got through that, because half the time when I read that poem, I can't finish it. But that is just to say that, well, this is a problem which is much deeper than just, an academic exercise. So thank you very much, Armand.
And thank you to you, Professor Lee. So I would like to check in with my chat monitor. Mrs. Torres, hello. Oh, Dr. Lee, you're allowed to turn off your camera now.
No, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Armand, things are going great in the chat right now. There's a lot of positive things and welcome. We do have a possible question for Dr. Lee. If you'd like to answer it now, we can save it for the end. Just something to think about, Dr. Lee. Just maybe
Sure.
some of these,
Certainly.
some of these behaviors that you saw your son experienced. Just thinking about, were these possibly learned from their home? Or where do you think they learn these unacceptable behaviors as children? What are your thoughts on that?
Just very briefly, this stuff wasn't really too much of a problem until high school. And in high school, these divisions started to appear, and then they became quite pronounced and even vicious. So no, I don't necessarily blame the parents. This is a racism which is endemic in our society and always has been. And it's something that you can simply pick up out of the air if you aren't being taught anti-racist values at home.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, for sharing. I now invite Miss Amina Campbell to turn on her camera because she is our next panelist for tonight. Amina is a current student at Maricosta High School. She is a member of the Black Scholars Union, and she is also a volleyball player for the Costa volleyball team. So, Amina, I will leave it to you.
Thank you. Can you still see me or no?
No.
Okay. Hi, my name is Mina Campbell. As you said, I play volleyball at Maricosta. I'm currently a sophomore there. I'm also part of the Black Scholars Union, and I'm currently the secretary of our club. Oh, sorry. My first week at Costa, I was really excited to go there. I hadn't grown up in Manhattan Beach, and I was excited to go to a different school with new people. And I'm also really passionate about volleyball, so I was excited for all of that. But my first day there, I didn't like it. I felt like an outsider. There was no one who remotely looked like me at all, and it was terrible. I felt alone, and I felt so like an outcast, as I said. My first week at Costa as a freshman, I was walking to my locker, and I heard these two boys around next, talking about me, and they go, "Oh, look, it's the Black girl." And I don't like being characterized as just my race. So I turned around and I said, "Hey, my name's Amina." And they said, "It doesn't matter. You guys all look the same anyway." And with that, I walked away and I simply just went to my next class. Later that day, I had I had a class of 2 of the boys who were there, and my teacher had asked me, she's like, oh, like, I know you don't, like, I know, like, you're my favorite, like, one of my favorite students. Like, where do you want to sit? And I was like, I don't care where I sit, just don't put me next to these boys. And she goes, why? And I tell her what happened. She tells my vice principal, and they handle it really well. They pull me out of class, they ask what happened, and the 2 boys are punished, and I get an apology letter. Like a week or so later, I'm in the same class with those same boys, and they're making monkey noises at me. An attendant in the classroom, as well as my teacher, noticed and reported it to the vice principal. And right away, those boys were kicked out of my class and were told to stay away from me altogether. That was all handled really well, but I really just disliked the fact that that happened in the first place. Going to Costa, there's a lot of like little microaggressive stuff that isn't blunt, that isn't monkey noises or saying something like as blatant as what they said, that I don't know how to deal with. I don't know what to say or how to like tell someone. I don't want to be categorized as an angry Black girl or someone to tell me I'm being overdramatic or sensitive when I'm not. And over time, those little microaggressive and racist things pile up, and it makes Costa like a bad place to be. And I find myself a lot of times saying, if I didn't play volleyball here, if they didn't have good volleyball, if that's not what I loved, I would not go here. And I still feel that way. And even this year, when I had the choice of going back to school or online, I told my mom, I said, I don't like being there. That's not a like healthy environment for me. I want to stay home. And I do. And even like soon, I have volleyball tryouts coming up, and I think about it and I'm like, I love this sport so much, but I don't like the people that they make me dislike something I love. And I really dislike that. But something that really, really helped me my freshman year was Black Scholars Union. It was like, I walked in the room and you see people who look like you, and you don't see that often at all. So that was already like a comforting feeling. We had like fun discussions, we played games, we planned events, we had like bonfires and fundraising events, which really, really helped make me enjoy my experience at Costa a little bit more. There was a sense of community there. We could talk about stuff that we couldn't talk about with other people, and we could relate in a way that we couldn't normally. And this year, I'm really like happy to be a part of it, and next year as well. And I also just feel like at Costa, like a better job we can do of is letting people know that diversity clubs exist. Because I know a lot of people like don't. They're like, oh, we have one of those? I didn't know. Or like also in the classrooms teaching about more Black history, or like even during Black History Month, a lot of my teachers didn't even mention it. Not even like my history teacher or my English teacher, no one. And I was like, wow, that's really sad. And also a big goal that I hope changes this year is that they make the Black History Month, Black History Month a
Or is that it? You're fine?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Amina, for sharing. Um, I'm sorry to hear that you don't have a good experience at Costa. You're free to turn off your camera now. So next up is Sierra Pickering, who is a junior at Maricosta High School and is the treasurer of the Black Scholars Union. So Sierra, I will give it to you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so just a little bit about me. My name is Sierra Pickering, and I'm a junior at Maricosta, and I'm the BSU treasurer. I've been in BSU since I was a freshman, and I was on Maricosta cheer and Maricosta track for freshman and sophomore year, but I sadly stopped because of the pandemic. But just to start with like a little bit of my experience at Costa, one moment that stuck out to me was freshman year. One of my teachers, I asked him to read like one of these business books. It was like about Amazon and like all types of different businesses. And I was like, oh, can I read your book? And he was like, are you sure that you want to read this? And I was like, yeah, why? And he was like, because people like you don't read business books. And I was like, that's interesting. So I didn't say much about it, but that was like kind of racist to me because he said that people like me aren't interested in, like, I guess, books that have a higher reading level. So that was a bit of a moment that stuck to me. So after that, I joined BSU because I wanted to see more people like me at the school because I hadn't experienced many people like me there. So freshman year, there was like a lot of people there. A lot of them were on sports that I had seen before. So it was like very fun experience. There was a lot of people interacting, and it was nice to see because you don't really see many African American students on the campus. And sophomore year, I also went, and there was like a major decline in the people there. And that's where I actually met Amina as well, because my sophomore year, she was there, and there wasn't as many people, but it was still a fun experience. And this year being on BSU, there's been a major decline in the people that have been there. There's only been about like 5 attendees every single Zoom meeting, which kind of saddens me because I feel like there's a lot more students on the campus that need to know about it. And I do think that our school doesn't really do a good job of letting people know that there's a Black Scholars Union, because we have asked them to like post about us, and like even on the club sheet when you get to join clubs, our club actually wasn't on it, surprisingly. And then we had to ask them to put it on it. But that was kind of like also sad to see that like our club doesn't really have a lot of coverage, and we try to be on social media often trying to promote our club, but there isn't a lot of people. So senior year as an upperclassman, I'm going to try to be a leader in Black Scholars Union, and efforts to have more African American students participate in the school, because I do feel like it's a very good space to meet more people like us, because there isn't that many on the campus. And I hope to run for president in efforts to create an open space for Black students to feel supported, even in times when they feel like an outsider, because I agree that I did also feel like an outsider just to see that there wasn't many minorities on the campus. And however, BSU does welcome all students and teachers, because the main goal is to have a place where everyone is welcomed and supported and can have fun while being educated on the things in our community that Black people specifically experience and how we're affected, and how to be like an ally for Black Scholars Union and like Black people in general in the school. So yeah, that's about it.
Thank you, Sierra, for sharing. I would like to recheck in with my chat monitor, Mrs. Torres. Sierra,
hi. Looking through the chat, Armand, things are going well. Everybody is being so encouraging to your 2 panelists, Sierra and Amina. They just want to thank them. They're all doing what you had asked in the beginning, to pause and think. And I just think that that is our overall goal for today. Pause and think about what these panelists are saying. So thank you, Sierra and Amina. Lots of thank yous. Great job.
Thank you.
And next, I would like to invite Mr. Ezra Cohen. Ezra is a junior at Maricosta High School, and he is a member of the Jewish Cultural Club, and he also plays tennis for Maricosta High School. So Ezra, I will give it to you.
All right, thank you, Armand, and for everyone coming to this Zoom. My name is Ezra Cohen, and I'm currently the vice president of the Jewish Cultural Club at Maricosta, and hopefully will be the president of the club next year. And I want to talk a little bit about how we are trying to combat a very real problem, anti-Semitism, in this club. And really, I believe in the club's mission is that exposure is one of the key factors in reducing racism and other forms of discrimination. And to talk a little bit about the Jewish club, there is no requirement to join the Jewish club. You don't have to be Jewish. And in fact, the majority of our members are not Jewish. And our current president, Parth, is not Jewish, and our previous president was not Jewish. I am Jewish myself. But the main goal of the Jewish club is to teach and learn information about about Judaism and Israel in a fun and open way. And we are helped by a rabbi who works at Chabad, and he helps run a lot of Jewish clubs in the South Bay area at a lot of high schools, such as Redondo, Palos Verdes, and he helps run other programs in the South Bay. And one of the main things we do in the club is to teach about the customs of Judaism. And one of the ways we do that is celebrating different Jewish holidays at our weekly meetings. So for example, before COVID, during the Jewish holiday Sukkot, it is a custom to build a sukkah, which is a semi-open hut decorated with branches, leaves, and other things. And so on the stage in the quad at Costa at one Tuesday at lunch, we built the sukkah, and we brought drills, hammers, ladders, wooden planks. And when we were finished building it, we taped a description of what it was and the meaning of Sukkot for Judaism to the front of the sukkah. And for the custom, we left it up for a week at Costa. And during that week, I saw many students go up and read the sign. And we probably exposed hundreds of students to Jewish traditions who may have known very little about Judaism, and potentially reduced anti-Semitism in the future. And we have been meeting on Zoom for most of this school year, but that hasn't stopped us from doing a lot of interesting and meaningful things. For example, we had a former Costa student come on as a guest speaker who was studying in Israel for a year, talk and answer questions about life in Israel. And one of the things she said that surprised some of the students who don't know a lot about Israel is she said a lot of the people in Israel are secular Jews or aren't Jewish at all. And a lot of the people that don't know a lot about Israel assume everyone in Israel are religious Jews, when that couldn't be farther from the truth. Israel is very ethnically and religiously diverse. And through this club, we've really helped correct incorrect assumptions and falsehoods about Jews in Israel. Another really interesting speaker we had this year on Zoom was a Holocaust survivor named Mordechai Berkowitz, who survived the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. And he gave a shocking firsthand account of his horrible experience during the Holocaust. And one of the main forms of anti-Semitism in the modern day is Holocaust jokes and humor and Holocaust denial. And I hope that everyone who listened to that speaker would be so touched by that story that they wouldn't make any Holocaust jokes and discourage others from doing so. And to add on to this, I really think it would be great if our district included more education, Holocaust education, in our curriculum. Obviously, our attendance has been down this year because of COVID and the challenges that brings, but hopefully next year, everyone will be back in person and we will be able to resume club meetings at Costa then. Back before COVID, one of the ways we would try to grow attendance of the club is we would offer free pizza to anyone that came to the club. And we became so popular that we would sometimes have 50 to 60 kids in one classroom. And to prevent students from taking a slice of pizza and leaving, we made it a requirement that in order to have a piece of pizza, students would have to stay for the majority of the club after having pizza. And ironically, we hired a student named Christian to be the bodyguard to check who was leaving. We weren't keeping anyone hostage. If they left right after getting pizza, we just wouldn't allow them back for a future meeting. But it really is my hope that through teaching tolerance in Jewish traditions and customs, I and the club can help put an end to anti-Semitism at Miracosta. And lastly, I would like to thank Armand and all of the speakers and thank you for inviting me to talk tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ezra, for being here. Next, I would like to invite Chloe and Maddie to turn on their cameras. So Maddie and Chloe are the president and vice president of the Asian American Club at Miracosta. Chloe is a senior and Maddie is a junior, and I will leave it to them.
Alrighty, good evening. I'm Chloe Krantz, president of the Asian American Club at Miracosta High School. You already heard that from.
And I'm Maddie Fang, vice president of the Asian American Club.
So just to give you some background, our club helps raise awareness and educates our community about the Asian American experience.
And even with the pandemic, our club has made sure to maintain an active presence in our community, especially with the rise in Asian hate crimes over the past couple of months.
We just want to create like a safe spot for students at Costa while also promoting a variety of Asian cultures by hosting fundraisers and events to support local Asian restaurants and organizations. So recently we listened to Lee Wong's speech, and he emphasizes on this idea of when Asians are American enough. And so building off of this idea, I just wanted to talk about my grandma who came to America after the Vietnam War along with her 5 children. So after being in and out of different wars nearly all of her life, she thought that her kids would be able to have an opportunistic lifestyle in America. So she supported her 5 children off of her one salary as a seamstress, pushed them to be educated to get jobs that would allow their kids to have even better opportunities. But however, there's still, however, with the opportunities I am so fortunate to have within the South Bay, there are still people that don't believe that we are American enough. People that tell us our food's smelly at lunchtime, people who joke about our race and stereotype us. My grandma didn't come here to be ridiculed, to be told, go back to your country, and to not have the same opportunities as a quote unquote American.
And despite growing up in Manhattan Beach my entire life, I have never felt American enough up until this past year. This is due to the racism and microaggressions that I've experienced throughout my entire life, even from my peers. And as early as elementary school, my classmates would pull their eyes back and mock Asian accents right in front of me. They would call my Korean and Chinese lunches smelly and gross, causing me to throw them away on many occasions. And this caused my little elementary school self to resent my Asian heritage, and I wished to be white so badly just so I could fit in. And as I entered middle school, I became so used to hearing those stereotypical racist comments that were masked as jokes. So I started to go along with it because I just didn't know what to say back. But when I finally entered high school, I was much more aware, and I finally had the courage to stand up for myself. So when my classmates would call me Ching Chong, or would ask me what life was like in North Korea, or ask if I ate cats and dogs, I would call them out. And some may believe that what they said to me was not a big deal, but I'm here to tell you that their words have made a lasting impact on me up until this very day, and I will never forget it.
So the reason why Asian American hate crimes, along with other hate crimes, continue is because the people who like to keep us divided. We see it in our schools. They teach students that we are all the same because they're threatened by what makes us unique. And even outside of school, where they utilize propaganda and media just to hide the real injustice in our streets.
And with all this being said, we need to continue working together as a community to prevent the further mistreatment of Asian Americans and other people of color in this country. Acts of bias, no matter how minuscule, contribute to the larger problems that we are facing today. For example, calling COVID-19 the Chinese virus or Kung flu may seem insignificant, but it does cause people to hold resentment against the entire Asian population, ultimately leading to the spike in Asian hate crimes that we have witnessed in recent times. So it all starts at an individual level, so it is crucial for people to hold themselves and others around them accountable for their words and actions.
So the problem we have today isn't really outraged whites or offended POCs. The problem is the people that feed off of hate. So it is all of our responsibilities not to only recognize respect for one another, but to also have the willingness to listen and change for the better.
Thank you.
Thank you both for presenting. That was wonderful. You two are allowed to turn off your cameras now. Thank you. Next, I would like to invite Miss Tara Grings, one of the 4 vice principals at Maricosta High School. She works in the technology and special education departments. And Miss Grings, I invite you to turn on your camera and share your story. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I just have to say I'm honored to be here, and I'm just even more amazed by our students for sharing your stories and for your bravery. So thank you so much, and thank you, Armand, for letting me be a part of this and crash your party. Again, my name is Tara Grings, and I'm one of the vice principals at Maricosta, and so many of the stories shared today really resonate with me, especially as I was growing up. I think the difference is that we're talking about it, and I think that's a huge step in the right direction. My story is really more about my professional career, and it's a story I feel it's about representation, defying odds, and changing my own mindset and my own self-doubt. Some of the themes people were hitting on have a lot to do with those little microaggressions and those little moments that really contribute to the makeup of who you are. And those contribute to overall self-doubt. And so I'm here to debunk that. I'm here to break those barriers and kind of tell my story. when I'm actually one of the first in my family to graduate from college. I graduated right out of just 4 years, and then I became a teacher. And I became a teacher. It sounds cheesy, but I believed I was going to change the world, and I'm hoping that my journey is on track. I got hired in mostly lower socioeconomic communities and underprivileged areas. And I found that work to be tremendously valuable. Every day I could see tangible moments where I was really making an impact. I can remember one, my students didn't have shoes, and I ran to the store and bought him a pair of shoes, and he was just so grateful. You could see it on his face. And I remember fundraising and not really raising a lot of money and kind of stuffing the fundraiser envelopes with my own cash just so that we could make the trip. And that work was very fruitful. There were times, though, that I have to say, again, not to be cheesy, I would really look at the Manhattan Beach Unified School District and wonder, wow, what would it feel like to actually work in a district like that, right? A district with so much opportunity, with 2-parent households and an affluent community, and just with all of the resources perceivably at your fingertips, just thinking what a great impact I could really make there. And I remember when Armand asked me to speak, I remembered applying to, or actually printing the application to be a teacher in MBUSD. And at that time, it had this big disclaimer on the application that said you had to turn it in person. And I remember filling it out completely, and it was sitting on the table. And I never got the courage to drive to the district and put my application in. And really, it was not because I didn't think I was a good teacher, and not because I didn't think that I was worthy or that I would be valuable to the organization, but I had all of this self-doubt that just said, well, you're Black, so like, why would they want to hire you? And thoughts like, you don't have a lot of experience working with that demographic. What could you possibly bring to the organization? And I have to admit that self-doubt really stifled my growth there, and I just didn't apply. Fast forward to my admin credentialing program. I was receiving my master's from Cal State Long Beach, and I was participating in a South Bay program. And lo and behold, Dr. Dale and Dr. Matthews show up in my class as my professors. And it was kind of a moment of fate where I was thinking, wow, this was the district I never had the courage to apply to. And they were great, of course, and captivating, as we all know them to be. And one day they invited me, and the whole class, it wasn't a personal invitation, but they invited the whole class to back to school night, probably because they were busy doing back to school night. And I remember walking on the MiraCosta campus and being floored by the resources that were there. I mean, the first thing I said was, oh my gosh, they have a pool? Like, I didn't even have a pool when I was in high school. I mean, I didn't even have a pool growing up. And I remember seeing the orchestra room and the band room, because I'm a musician. And I remember seeing the choir room, and it was outfitted with all of the acoustics and soundproofing. And I thought, oh my gosh, what must it feel like to work here? And I'm really competitive. So it was that moment that I kind of said to myself, okay, you have to apply, right? And I know that I thought to myself, I know they're probably not going to pick me, because what would I possibly offer this organization? But I just had to do it. And I'm happy to say that I was hired. And I feel like I was hired based on my merit and based on my value. Not because I checked a box of diversity, or because, of my race, or even because I was a woman. And I remember my first day, someone told me, you're the first African-American vice principal that MiraCosta has ever had. And they said it kind of like a compliment, but I thought, and I said, wow, that's awful, right? I mean, I think that's such a terrible thing to say in the year 2017, which was the year. And it was that day that I really said to myself, I'm going to be what it is that I needed to see to get the courage and up to apply for this job, right? I mean, that little Amina, who's sitting in one of her classes thinking that she wants to be the next vice principal of MiraCosta, or the next engineer, or the next president, or whatever it is, I want her to see me, see that representation for her. And I think that matters. I think that means more than anything I could say, right? Anything we could talk about. I think just seeing yourself in leaders, I think is really what it takes to have that courage to say, I can do it too, right? And so I'm just so moved to be in a position where I can offer that representation. I have had an amazing experience with the students at Costa. I have sat across tables with students who do not believe what I believe, who do not worship the same God, who do not look like me, who do not have the same political values, and they've always approached me with respect. Maybe because they know I probably can suspend kids, but I like to think it's because they are a shining beacon of light for what our future can be. And I think about my mom's generation, and I know we haven't come very far. There's a lot of growth that still needs to happen, but I am truly, truly inspired by the youth at MiraCosta every single day, that and the youth in this room, that we have the power to change the world. We have the power to speak up and make sure that those silenced voices are heard. And so thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you, Manhattan Beach, for welcoming me with open arms. I am a proud member of MUSD.
And I would like to personally thank you, Mrs. Grings, for not only being here, but also applying to be a vice principal at MiraCosta High School. So I would like to do another check-in with my chat monitor, Ms. Torres. So Ms. Torres, how are we doing?
Yeah, Ms. Springs, if you could hold on right there, I do have a question for you in just a second. But Armand, I just want to share with you, I went through the chat right now. I just want to pull out some powerful words that I saw. Reflect, vulnerable, bravery, listen, truth, aware, and relatable. So keep the chat flowing. I'm going to keep pulling out those keywords that we all need to think about. And but I do have a question for you, Ms. Grings. So there's a couple of questions in the chat right now about the Manhattan Beach School District. And if you have any advice, or maybe you know of things coming to your district, is there any talk about bringing ethnic studies or anti-racism as part of the, I almost said my own district, a part of the Manhattan Beach School District curriculum?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know we've got a lot of great people on listening in from our EDSJI committee, which I am a proud member of. And I'm actually even more proud that I can say that acronym correctly. A big part of our push for our mission towards culture and equity in our district has been this committee and our own education on what it looks like to be culturally relevant in our curriculum. And we're taking a deep introspective look on that, the members of the committee, but also sort of using it as a spearhead for how we can push this mission in our district. And so I'm very proud to say that I think I speak for the committee, I speak for all the members, that we are very much looking to enrich the curriculum in that way. And I think an ethnic studies class is an awesome example of how that can happen. For me, the mission really has to be, and Amina, you touched on this, it has to be an integral part of our everyday lives at Costa. We have to utilize the platform that we have to educate our students, to really make cultural diversity a part of it. It needs to be woven into the fabric. It needs to be talked about in the hallways. And we have these great, amazing assemblies, and I absolutely love being a part of them, but it can't just be one day, right? It can't just be 1 month. And so I think a class, I think looking at our curriculum, looking at our novels that we're using, I know our teachers, some of the teachers that are on here have really pushed for diverse content and literature. So thank you for that. I think it's all of those things to really shed light on the diverse cultures in our district, but also to see yourself in what you're learning. That's the way that it becomes relevant for you. So thanks for the question.
And thank you again for sharing. Just a little side note, I would personally love to have an ethnic studies class at school. So now we're going to move on to one of two video submissions of the night from Tommy Nakwa. He is from the Maricosta class of 2017, and he played the trombone in the Grammy Award-winning Maricosta Band Program. So if Mr. Shifri can pull up his video and share it, that would be nice. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tommy Tomikawa. I am class of Maricosta class of 2017. I use he, they pronouns. This is actually my second take. My first take was very ranty. I'm trying to organize my thoughts better. I personally, I know we're supposed to tell stories about diversity and inclusion within like sort of our experiences at MBUSD. I went to MBMS. I also went to Costa. Did 7 years of time within the school district. But I was very fortunate. I created spaces for myself. I made sure to always feel like I was wanted in a space. I tended to avoid other places where, I didn't feel included. Mostly because sometimes things send you home crying. Or you get home and you're like, I can handle this, and then you like literally close the door and you start crying. I have had those experiences at MBMS and Costa. I hate to say that it's normal because it shouldn't be. And largely, as someone who was able to, go to school across the country, essentially leave this bubble, the South Bay bubble, I have met 3 people from this area, who did not go to Costa, but went to the surrounding area, during high school and things like that, at college, across 4 years. I was the odd one out being from Southern California usually. So that explains a lot. And being able to break away from this bubble and still being essentially away from the bubble, I am lucky, I guess, say lucky enough to be able to reflect, look at sort of what was my high school experience like, because there's so many things I wish I did differently. I wish I was honestly a bit more outspoken about politics and trying not to get called a slur every day while walking, very frequently, not necessarily every day, oh god. I would have honestly reported that. But very frequently when walking home from junior year, sophomore year, and freshman year. Whenever I walked home, there was a good chance I would be called some form of slur. Yeah, can't exactly say that's a good scenario to have gone through. It really isn't. And I think that honestly reflects the social culture we have constructed and we continue to implement. Someone can do that and we would be like, oh, it was an isolated incident. No, it's genuinely not. What leads someone to think that they can roll down their car window and yell something like that at me? That is genuinely something that is not okay.
that should not be normal, and yet here we are. I want to talk about the positive moments I've had at Lake Costa and MBMS. I found a group within band. I am very lucky you found a group within band. But I also have to acknowledge that there were so many moments that made me decide to go to college and break away from this social stigma and like literally this like weird culture that we have here, because I recognized it was not okay. It's something that I sort of laugh at now, because now I would definitely sort of like more or less yell back something. Like, I don't choose to be passive anymore. I can run fast, so there's a benefit. I make jokes about these kinds of things because it helps me cope. But we don't necessarily have an actual inclusive measure to include LGBTQIA plus like kids and community. We don't have measures to include, you know, POC people, BIPOC people. So like Black and Indigenous people, we don't have actual places really within like Costa or like the system at large to include them in the larger bubble. We make affinity groups like, you know, BSU, GSA, things like that, to make a space for like all marginalized groups. But, and it's a big but that does not honestly affect the larger community at all, because by sectoring us off, like sectoring a marginalized community off, it lets it so that this larger bubble can honestly choose to ignore it. And I feel like that's where we need to play catch up too. Like, I'm always all for like a GSA, BSU. At my school, it was ASA, Asian Students Alliance, like, or Asian Students Association. I'm all for groups like that because it's necessary. It's a necessary space for us kids who honestly, like, we don't have a shared experience with the larger body of culture. We grow up in the same place. We can be like, oh, no, we shared a lot of things. Once we get out of it, we look back and we're sort of like, oh, I was still an other. And that's where the issue lies. That's it. This was a lot less ranty than my first take. I will say the positive things. I am grateful for my friends. I am grateful for my time at Costa because it did give me opportunities. I was able to push myself very academically and things like that. But having explored academia further and with such a focus on like Asian American studies and things like that, I wish that we could honestly just expand to include more stories of people like me and other people on like the panel, because that sort of is what's important in creating a larger effort. So thank you for listening. Yes, I am at work, so I should go.
Yes, as mentioned, Tommy's entire speech will be posted on www.mb-indivisible.org if you were to wish to watch it. I recommend it 100%. It's an amazing. It's worth the 15 minutes that like. So I will move on to our next panelist, who is Matthew Nelson, who is from the class of 2018, and he played the tenor saxophone in the Grammy Award-winning Maricosta Band Program. So Matthew, I will leave it to you.
What's good, everyone? Like Armand said, my name is Matthew Nelson. I'm a Costa alumni, was in the band program playing tenor saxophone. Like Tommy in the video just mentioned, for the most part, I found a pretty close circle of friends in band. I didn't do much outside of that. I didn't live in Manhattan Beach. So most of my experiences were within that culture, and then my own like home life, right? So I didn't experience these types of overt racism, people calling me slurs, or this type of exclusion, because I wasn't in this environment I wasn't as so saturated in this environment as some of the other panelists have been. Given that, there are still moments, that I can remember, even though it's been a while, I can still remember of those microaggressions of, people maybe looking at you funny when you're minding your own business, walking on the Strand, or when you're staying at school, after school, people kind of looking at you like, why are you here? What are you doing here? Being questioned, even though you are minding your own business, or things of that sort. So I really want to second and third things that have been said, that, these things exist. We all deal with them. At the time, I personally didn't know really how to deal with those microaggressions. I just sort of heard them and I brushed them off because I had that support group, those friends that I had gotten in band. So I'm grateful and fortunate, and maybe as Tommy said, lucky to have had that be the majority of my experience. And given that, I did want to make the point that the reason why that experience was the way that it was in band particular is because the director, Joel Carlson, or Mr. Carlson, actively acted against exclusion, right? Because, as we are all, even, at my school, I'm working on committees to try to get this idea into a school-wide implementation, right? And the idea was that in addition to being inclusive with material and curriculum, things of that sort, there was a very active and he was very, very against exclusion. He would call it out pretty much instantaneously. He was not for that. So really going forward, as we think and have these conversations with ourselves and with our staff and faculty about how to make this change, I want to make the point that inclusion is essential. It's really important. At the same time, we have to actively fight against the people, ideas, structures that are actively excluding, right? Because we can't really make the progress if the wall is still there. So I want to make that point. I was fortunate enough, again, to have the experience that I did, but it was because of that. So I just want to leave everyone with that idea that it goes both ways, having inclusion and also actively having those hard conversations, sitting down with the people who, might be the problem, and talking with them with respect and grace and dealing with these issues head on. So that's what I have to say. Thank you for having me, Armand.
And thank you for being here. As a member of the band program myself, I can truly agree, and I can validate everything that Matthew and Tommy said about the band program. And so before I check in with my chat monitor, I would just like to say thank you to all 80 tonight, around 80 to 90 of you that made the effort to come today. And so I thank you all to that. And now I would like to check in with my chat monitor, Mrs. Torres. So, Mrs. Torres, what's the update?
Yeah, Armand, everything's looking great out there. I think the main word that I'm seeing in the chat is courage. And I know you have a lot of professors on from our surrounding universities that work with a lot of our educators. And I'm just so happy that they're here sharing this moment with you to learn more. And we appreciate that. So hi, Dr. Collins. I know you're here with me tonight. But we do have a question for our last speaker, Matthew. There was a question for Tommy, who I know is not here, so I'm going to throw it out to you, Matthew. What do you think a parent who has students in Manhattan Beach can do as a parent to help her students be more inclusive and a kind, or let me read that again. What do you think she can do as a parent to help make Costa a more inclusive and kind place for all students? What do you think?
Yeah, good question. Very good question. I think, like I said earlier, well, with anything, you have to cater to the situation, right? So, I have been in Costa about 3 years now, so the situation may have, somewhat changed since I've been there. But first, you have to take an honest assessment of where the culture is right now, right? That's, step one. And then, make those inclusive efforts, right? Whether it be more clubs or more diverse curriculum, that's definitely an issue. It's more diverse curriculum. And having that in place. And then at the same time, with the people who won't take those classes, with the people who will refuse to read those books, you have to have those conversations with those people, address the things that are making it difficult for those inclusive things to have the intended effect, right? Because it's a lot harder. I can tell you from experience, it's a lot harder to sit down with someone who may be the problem. It might be harsh, people might think it's brutal, but those are the kind of conversations that you have to have. So a combination of those two things. And as a parent, whether you're going to meetings, bring those things up. If someone or something is the issue, bring it up. While at the same time going, okay, we need more diversity in history class. We need better books in English class. We need these children need looking mirrors. Like someone said before, they need to see themselves, right? So the aggregate of these things will give that solution, but you have to cater them to the situation that is at Costa right now.
Thank you for sharing, Matthew. I now invite Miss Diana Sakar to turn on her camera. Miss Sakar is a Manhattan Beach resident with 2 children who attend Pinningcamp Elementary. And she is also the core organizer of the MB Families Against Asian American and Pacific Islander, or otherwise known as the AAPI, Hate Chalk event last April. I personally attended and I enjoyed every second of it. And the event saw over 100 residents and city and school leaders united to spread messages in support and solidarity against hate. So I will turn it over to Ms. Diana.
Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm so thrilled to see over 80 people dialed in to have this conversation. It really warms my heart. I'm looking at the date. It's May 7th. That means we are 7 days into Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Now, it's not as widely known as Black History Month or Women's History Month, but given the rise in Asian hate crimes, I'm realizing now more than ever why we need a month like this dedicated to celebrating the contributions of Asian Americans. Because in absence of this celebration and visibility, it's easy to fill the void with misinformation, which marginalizes Asians as the main cause of this pandemic. And in the absence of truth, misplaced hate fills the void. And so for the past few months, I've been trying to wrap my head around all this hate. Compared to March of last year, there's been a 74% increase in the number of reported incidents of hate against Asians. 74%. And When I saw that a Thai grandpa was killed after being randomly attacked during his daily walks, as a Thai American, it just hit too close to home. I never had to be concerned about when my mom and dad had to go to the market to run their errands, but now I was having conversations with them about how they go about their day and how they remain safe. And then when my son came home from school sharing a new joke he learned where he made the chinky eyes and spoke in an Asian accent, my heart just sank. In moving to Manhattan Beach, I thought I could shield my kids from these racist jokes, at least at the elementary school level. But at that point, I knew that I could no longer shield them, but instead had to prepare them. But what exactly do you say to your 8 and 10-year-old about racism? As a parent, there's an element where of the innocence that you want to preserve within your kids for as long as you can. And so we started talking about how to recognize when a joke makes you feel uncomfortable, how to stand up and be a good friend when you feel your buddy is being made fun of for their heritage or for the shape of their eyes or for their skin color. And how that uneasiness inside of you is actually a truth. And instead of denying it and staying silent or worse, laughing along, how you could actually say something as simple as, hey friend, that's not cool with me. And then what do I say to my Manhattan Beach friends as I go about my day? Manhattan Beach, I have a lot of friends on this right now. We sure do love our bubble, right? We love to talk about when things can get back to normal, how excited we are that kids are back in school, how youth sports is back. But inside, for so long, you had no idea that I was putting, on this facade, and how tiring it was for me to pretend that life's a beach, and how disappointed I was in myself for not being true to you when asked, hey, Diana, how's it going? How's your day going? You didn't know that I was internalizing all this pain, but I also realized that you may not know how to comfortably engage in this topic for fear of saying the wrong thing. But then something wonderful happened. School board member Jason Boxer, I see you on the call, connected me to a fellow Manhattan Beach mom, Madeline Kaplan, I also see you on the call, who had learned about how the rise in Asian hate crimes had affected her neighbors. And after chatting with our police department, who directed her to the LA versus Hate website, Madeline got the idea to start a sidewalk chalk campaign, and I loved it. It was exactly what I had needed. I needed to see those messages of solidarity and support from my friends and neighbors. I needed to see the hate against the Asian community is not being ignored by Manhattan Beach. And I was thrilled to see the acts of kindness with so many beautiful and colorful messages flooding the driveways and sidewalks of my neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods. And what I really loved about this Sidewalk Chalk campaign was that it allowed Manhattan Beach residents to express their support and solidarity while not requiring anyone to engage in conversation unless, of course, they were ready to do so. And I've been truly amazed by the dialogue that this has opened up. And I can't tell you the number of new neighbors and community members I have met as a result of this event. People out on their daily walks or kids walking home from school would stop by and ask, what does stop Asian hate mean? And then we had meaningful conversations about diversity and respect and what they could do if they were a bystander to hate and how they could safely intervene. So for example, if Armand was being harassed and I happened to witness this, instead of engaging directly with the harasser, which could potentially put me in danger, I could call out to Armand, hey buddy, do you need help? Do you want me to call the police as a signal to the harasser that I'm observing what is going on and that I'm standing in solidarity with Armand? Fortunately, this type of training is actually free. And my hope is that we can promote bystander intervention training more widely across our schools and at the city level. And so this Sidewalk Chalk event ended up being much more than an expression of solidarity. It resulted in new friends. It resulted with me learning more about my neighbors and their backgrounds. And it created more of that small town community feeling that we all love about Manhattan Beach. And so this is the Manhattan Beach that I know. And I'd love to cultivate more of that. And if you're thinking just like me, I would love for you to reach out to me so that we could brainstorm on how we could do that. And so thank you, Armand, and for the organizers of this event for creating the safe space where we could have this dialogue.
And thank you, Diana, for attending. It was an honor to have you here today. Next, I would like to invite Miss Sheila. Sheila is a member, has been a member of the Manhattan Beach Community Church congregation for over 48 years, which is, in my opinion, a very, very long time. And Miss Sheila is a former flight attendant, life insurance agent, and teacher. And so, Miss Sheila, I would invite you to share your story, and I will give you the floor.
Is my video showing?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Armand, for asking our family to participate in this forum. I will share my ideas from 3 perspectives. First, from my life before the South Bay, then during our almost 50 years of living in the Tri-Cities area of Hermosa, Redondo, and Manhattan, and finally, what I hope for the future of this community. As a very young child, I lived in Detroit, Michigan, around a large extended family of grandparents, aunts, and uncles, and many cousins. My parents and I moved to Los Angeles when I was 5, and I watched multi-ethnic communities evolve over and over into racially isolated enclaves. I didn't know about redlining at the time. However, I watched white people move away as Black families would move into an area, and I saw the result of a mailbox bombing of a beautiful Mount Vernon style home of my parents' friends. Since the Black people on our block all kept their homes meticulously groomed, I didn't understand why white flight was so prevalent. My husband experienced the same syndrome as the first Black family to move to Whittier. Although I was an only child for 9 years, our home was rarely without an extra person at the dinner table. That additional table, a person or two, were usually from other states, cultures, or countries. And the public schools I attended were often a mix of cultures and economic backgrounds as well. When I arrived at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, I was one of only 3 Black women enrolled at the time. It was the first time in my life that I felt like such an anomaly. It certainly wouldn't be the last. I have straddled the Black and white, male and female, privileged and underdog world ever since. I have certainly experienced the joy of friendship, fun, and discovery, along with the loneliness of so often being the other. Upon moving to the South Bay, we immediately joined the Manhattan Beach Community Church, or MBCC for short. I let my husband Ron choose the family's church because I knew it would be easier for him to convert to a congregational United Church of Christ UCC tradition than for him to become Episcopalian, which was the religion in which I was raised. Our family has been accepted, supported, and given enormous opportunities to participate in the broader community because of our connection to MBCC. For this, I am eternally grateful. Through the Social Action Board, my husband Ron became involved with what is now known as 1736 Family Crisis Center and has remained active for more than 40 years. What I have appreciated most about MBCC are the many ecumenical learning opportunities it has given me. The church has had a rabbi on its staff, interfaith Thanksgiving services with Catholics, Mormons, Muslims, Sikhs, and others, sharing the iftar which is the meal which breaks the Ramadan fast, and working with other faiths at Habitat for Humanity. My personal life has been blessed with Jewish bat and bar mitzvahs, Seventh-day Adventist traditions, Jewish seders, Buddhist and other Asian weddings, and traveled to more than 45 countries to see for myself that the vast majority of people everywhere are good. What I am hoping for in this community and my church is acknowledgement that injustices have been committed, that history is not a one-sided victor's story, but a complicated, messy, sometimes ugly past that can be changed and improved with conscious effort. I am proud of MBCC for serving the homeless through Family Promise, St. Paul's Methodist Church, and 1736 Crisis Center. I am proud that our church has helped create sustainable solutions to problems in other countries through our work with TechnoServe and other UCC philanthropic services. And I am certainly proud to know so many of our congregation who give their time, talents, and treasures to help so many. I love helping people associate with others they may not necessarily meet otherwise. I hope we will re-examine some of the assumptions we've grown up with regarding people with disabilities, ideas, and lifestyles different from our own. I hope our church will incorporate a sign language interpreter for every service and figure out better ways to welcome people with other differences into our fold. I have had a mantra since I was a teen that has served me well, and I hope it can provide guidance to others as well. If I knew you and you knew me, if both of us could clearly see, and with an inner sight divine, the meaning of your heart and mine, I'm sure that we should differ less and clasp our hands in friendliness. If I knew you and you knew me, as each one knows his own self, then we could look each other in the face and see therein a truer grace. Life has so many hidden woes, so many thorns for every rose. The why of things our hearts would see if I knew you and you knew me. And that was from a book that I received on my 16th birthday called Something to Live By. And it is a collected and annotated by Dorothea Copeland. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Sheila, for sharing that poem. It was very nice. I enjoyed it. I would like to do one last check-in with my chat monitor, Mrs. Torres, before we share the last video of the evening.
Well, Armand, it's just so great that you still have almost 90 participants on a Friday night at almost 8 o'clock still here with you.
Yes,
so I think in the chat, there's a lot of chatting about how we're just scratching the surface. And they just really wanted to thank Diane and Sheila for bringing out their stories and getting conversations starting. And let's keep digging. Let's keep scratching more to really uncover what's happening and how Diane said how to help as being a bystander too. But one thing I want all the educators out there to think about, because I know we have a lot of educators out there. One of the comments, actually I saw two in the chat, was how do we encourage our school districts to really think about bringing in some sort of curriculum, even starting with our young students at the preschools, at the TK, and at the elementary school level. So just something to think about for all of us educators out there. So great job, Armand. I hope this continues. And thank you all for being a part of the chat. Keep the chat flowing for Armand.
Thank you, Mrs. Torres. And I would like to finally invite the final panelist of the night. She sent me a video. So if Mrs. Shifpuri can present the video, that would be nice. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lenore Merwani. I'm the co-owner of Barsha in Manhattan Beach. Thank you so much, Armand, for having me as part of this community panel. It's so important to create platforms for community members to express their heart and connect with other members on a personal level. So Barsha Wines has been established for over 8 years in Manhattan Beach, and I feel so blessed to have created a vision with my partner, who so happens to be my husband. and to see it grow organically over the years, and to also have brought up our two girls within our business. A few years back, we also had the wonderful opportunity to create what I call my dream shop, The Souk in downtown Manhattan Beach, which is now currently only an online shop. It truly gave me an opportunity to connect on a deeper level with customers and the community. Through conversations at the shop, it was expressed to me from Black and Brown customers, friends, and family members that they felt awkward and out of place in Manhattan Beach. Those comments took me back to when I was a young girl growing up in Hawthorne, when I made the trek to the closest beach, which was Manhattan Beach, to explore and expand my dreams. I felt appreciative to be there, but I did feel out of place, as if the color of my skin and where I came from already dictated that I didn't belong. My brother has even been pulled over by the cops after a late workout near the sand dunes for nothing other than looking suspicious. Why does the color of your skin and the car you drive play a factor in your experience? I feel grateful to be embraced by our community as business owners, but also realize that it's a different experience as an outsider. We as a community and society have experienced many downfalls within the year, but after a fall comes the opportunity to heal and get back up. Let's come together as a community, open our hearts, and actively listen to those that don't feel like they belong. Let's go out of our way to stand up against any form of hate, bullying, and exclusion. If we saw a Black man being called the N-word in Manhattan Beach, or our Asian neighbors being discriminated against, how can we specifically stand up for them both individually and as a community? Let's ensure that everyone that comes into Manhattan Beach feels like they belong. For myself, it means making sure the little Lenoras feel like it's their beach city too. As Coretta Scott King says, the greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members, a heart of grace and a soul generated by love. Thank you. Wash away. I cry. I cry because of the system, a system deeply rooted in injustice, inequity. I cry for people that feel less than simply because of the color of their skin. I was handed this beautiful shade of brown, but didn't know that it gave me automatic hardship. My father is the product of the prison system. His father and mother's lives were threatened by the KKK. Generation after generation of unrest, pain, anger, distrust, passed down subconsciously. I now hold in my heart the weight and pain of where I came from. I pray at this stream for the world to be washed away of hate and filled with the waters of understanding, love, more understanding, more love.
And with that concludes our panel section of the evening. I would like to thank Miss First Mrs. Grolnick for helping me with and also Miss Jen Fenton and the amazing Jason Boxer for helping me plan through this event. And most importantly, I would like to I would like to the word is thank. Yes, the word thank Miss Hildy Stern for helping me promote this event. And I would like to thank all of the panelists, and I would have them turn on their cameras, please, so that we can thank each and every one of you. So I would like to thank all of you, and I will reshare the rules of engagement with all of you, and I will give you a few minutes, maybe 2 to 3 minutes, to sort of reflect on the stuff that you shared tonight, or the stuff that was shared tonight, and reflect. And when you are ready to share, you can text ready to share in the chat, and I will have someone from my team pull you in to share, to either share live, or you can feel free to share in the chat as you please. So no, that's not what I want to do. So for the here are the prompts. I will give you a few minutes to reflect on what you heard tonight, and when you are ready to share, please text ready to share in the chat. Thank you. Diana, feel free to begin when you're ready.
Yeah. So before listening to tonight's keynote and panelists, I used to think that it was frowned upon to discuss controversial topics like racism. Like I said, MB, we sure do love our bubble. But now I know that Manhattan Beach welcomes this dialogue. And while racism is not going to be solved overnight, and it's not going to be solved with just dialogue, starting tomorrow, I'm going to be engaging in more conversation with my friends in the community, with city leaders and with school leaders about specific actions that we could take.
Thank you for sharing. And I invite those who are not comfortable speaking live to share in the chat as you, if you want to share but are not comfortable. Matthew, you can be next.
That's good again. So before this panel and now right after it, it really just confirms the idea that there's serious work to be done by all parties involved, right? Those who are experiencing the racism, those who are perpetuating it. And even now I'm doing research to like combat these things. So really, going forward, it just lights the fire, in me to just keep going harder to address these issues, because as we saw today, they're as real as can be.
Thank you, Matthew. And to answer Jenny's question, the question is, how can we get more parents involved, especially those not in the inclusion bubble? I feel like the best way to do that is to promote events such as this one and Diana's event that was in May. And so that is the simple answer. Yeah. And once again, feel free to chat ready to share, or type your answer to the reflection prompts in the chat when you're ready. Well, if no one is, oh yeah, yes, Ms. Grings.
Hi. I didn't know how to raise my hand. I was looking for the button. Sorry. For the parents that are asking how you can get more people involved, I did want to just raise the awareness about our equity audit that the district is conducting as a result of that EDSJI committee. Sorry, my daughter's taking a bath right now, if you can hear her. So the form, the participants that we need actually are seniors. And so there's actually in the senior Google Classroom, there's an assignment in there. We do need parent consent, even if our seniors are 18. And so that consent form is in there, as well as the assignment. So if you're interested parents, or if you have any any friends who have students who are seniors, if you could spread the word, we would love to hear that vantage point in our audit that we're conducting, because it really will inform sort of our practices moving forward. So check out your seniors Google Classroom for more information.
Thank you for sharing, Mrs. Grings. I will have my senior friends check it out for sure. And if no one else is willing to share, I would like, we have Mrs. Torres that says, starting tomorrow, I will continue to have uncomfortable conversations. And I would certainly like to continue to have those conversations, as uncomfortable as they are. And so to conclude this event, I invite, this is the end of the event. So I would like to thank you all for coming. For all 78 of you that stuck around to the end. And to answer Lee's question, I will be posting the recording on my website along with a few other things. I realized that part of the beginning is missing. That is on me. You are all free to go. Panelists, you can stay until the end if you wish. And I would like to thank you all for sharing our stories today. So, as it goes, all good things must come to an end. So, you all are free to go. Thank you all for coming again. This was amazing. I appreciate every one of you for taking the time to be here today. We did run 17 minutes over, which was nice, and you all are free to go. Thank you for coming. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Armand.
Thank you,
Thank
Armand.
you.